everyone, it's Kathy and welcome back to my channel. For today I'm going to be doing my very first Q&A video. So I asked you guys here on YouTube and over on my Instagram account to ask me any question, either macrame related or about myself. Basically anything, you could have asked me anything. So I have your questions here on my phone and I'm going to read them and answer them as best as I can. So let's just get right to it and get started. Alright, so the first question is, I would like to know how you were introduced to macrame and why you decided to teach. Alright, so I was pretty much introduced to macrame based on pictures I saw online, and I thought that the art people were making by tying knots was beautiful. Alright, so I instantly fell in love with macrame just by looking at other people's work. And what really got me into it was I just randomly stumbled across a YouTube video on how to do a wall hanging about 2-ish years ago. And maybe a little over 2 years, I don't quite remember. And I just thought, I can do this. This looks easy. So I bought myself some rope and I made a wall hanging. And looking back now, I probably would say I didn't do the best job with making it. But for my first attempt, I was really proud of myself. And that's how I got started. So basically, I found a YouTube video and I was hooked ever since. Now, as to why I started teaching, I would say when I was making that first wall hanging, I was really struggling with tying double half hitch knots. For whatever reason, I just couldn't grasp how to tie these knots. So I went through a ton of different tutorials here on YouTube, and I found them all confusing. I couldn't figure it out based on other people's tutorials, so it took multiple tutorials for me personally to grasp the concept of this knot. And because it took me going through multiple video tutorials to finally understand it myself, I wanted to try to make my own tutorials and teach in a way that I thought would have helped me learn when I was a beginner, and that's what I wanted to do. So one of my first tutorials here, I believe, is the double half hitch knot. If it's not my first video, I don't really remember, to be honest. But so I just wanted to teach in a way that I personally would have been able to understand and grasp just by watching one video. So that is why I decided to teach. It's just I wanted to help kill the frustration that other beginners had. And hopefully I'm doing an okay job. I don't know, but hopefully you guys think I'm doing an okay job. Alright, so I have two questions pretty similar, and it is asking about how to sell macrame and how can a profit be made. So I feel a little awkward answering this question simply because I've actually never sold any of my macrame work before. I know that's a little crazy, but I haven't. I've only ever made things for myself, for my family, and for my friends, and for my viewers on YouTube. I think I've always been a little afraid to sell my own work, and I don't know why, I just am. So I totally understand why you guys would also have that little hesitation and be afraid. But in regards to how to make a profit, so if I was to sell my work, obviously I would calculate the price of supplies, so how much feet of rope you used and how much that was. And then I would take into account labor. So a good guide that a lot of artists use is $20 per hour of work. So some people might think that's pretty high, but I mean, creating art and putting your time and labor into this is worth $20 at least. And on top of that, know your worth, know how much you bring. So if you are really original in your designs, if you are very precise in your knot tying, take that into account. Add a little extra cost on top of that based on your skill. So maybe if you are just starting out and you're not quite as like perfect, and I say perfect like that because is anyone ever perfect in art? I mean, art is an expression of ourselves. So just maybe you would want to start a little lower, but also you know your worth. Okay, that's all I can tell you guys is don't be afraid to price up your items because you think nobody's going to want to spend money. Know your worth, okay? Now let's see. Okay, so a couple people want to know where they can buy rope and cord at a cheaper price so they can make bigger and better pieces. So I have a video kind of dedicated to choosing the perfect rope for your project, and I explain a few places you can buy rope. So good high quality rope can be a little pricey. I don't know if there's a way to get around that if you really want the really high-end quality stuff, but you can also buy nice things a little cheaper that I think is just as good. So on Amazon, if you have Amazon available to you, there's a lot of rope options that some people would say isn't the best quality, but other people have used and love just fine. I've used some like Craftiza, they're from Amazon, and I think their rope is really nice. They don't have huge bulk sizes, I don't think. They might now. I haven't actually used them in a little while, but they might, so I would check them out. I mean, high quality rope to some people just means that it's going to be really soft on your hands. It's going to be easy to work with, and it's going to be really pretty when it's all finished, but rope is rope. So if you don't mind something a little tougher on the fingers and maybe not as easy to like bend and flex, then you might be okay finding something at your local craft store too that's a lot cheaper. Otherwise, I will leave a few links in the description for the rope I personally love and use, and some other options to help you maybe find something for you. But honestly, guys, just go online to Amazon, Etsy, Google macrame rope supplies, and shop around. You'll find something I think that's in your budget and that you'll like. Let's see what the next question is. Okay, so what is the difference between macrame cord, rope, yarn, and string? So I am super guilty of always calling rope, cord, and string. I interchange those words constantly. So it's kind of the same thing, but if we're going to be technical, I think when people refer to macrame string, they're pretty much talking about the single stranded twist. So when it's all those little tiny strings twisted together, usually that's what they're referring to when they call macrame string. When they're saying rope, that's usually when we're talking about 3-ply. So when you have the 3 bundles of strings all twisted together, that would be your rope. And then when people talk about macrame cord, usually they're talking about the braided stuff. And yarn, I don't know. Yarn, I feel like, is what you use when you're crocheting or, what is it called? Knitting. I think that's really what you use yarn for. So it's a little more fuzzy, I think. It's a little harder, I think, to tie knots with that kind of stuff. I've never used it or tried to use yarn for macrame, so I mean, maybe it's okay depending on what you're making, so you can test that too. What is the most preferred cord, rope, yarn, or string to purchase? This again is kind of a personal preference, so I really like to use 3-ply most of the time, so that would be cord, or no, sorry, that would be rope, I guess. See, I interchanged the words. But it really depends on the project I'm using, because I really like single-stranded string too, and I like braided cord too. Sometimes you really need a good braided cord depending on what you're making. So That's a personal preference, and it depends on what you're making. Is there any preference or difference between 3mm and 4mm cord? Yes, so that's obviously size. They're talking about size. 3mm is when you start getting into that pretty small rope, and that is really, really good for like earrings or other jewelry, anything where you want that small, delicate look. I recommend using 3mm or smaller. I think 3mm is that perfect size for that, just because it's not super, super tiny, but it's also still small enough to be able to do earrings and stuff. 4mm is when you start getting into your more average size for wall hangings and stuff like that. So 4mm, I prefer 4 over 3 for me personally when doing a wall hanging. Other people probably prefer 3mm, so again, that's kind of a personal preference, but I always recommend for your wall hangings to use 4, 5, or 6mm for your rope. That's an average size. It's easy to work with. You'll be able to see your knots really well, and I just think that it's a little easier to work with personally. What is 2mm cord used for in 3mm cord? So we already talked about 3mm cord. 2mm again is that really small cord, and it's what you're going to want to use for small sized projects. So again, your jewelry, maybe a keychain. Why do a lot of people use one string twisted cord, and what is it used for? Okay, so people love to use that because you're able to brush it out and make beautiful fringe. So you get really soft, fluffy, smooth fringe when you use the one stranded twisted rope. So that is why a lot of people like that. It's also really, really soft on the hands, so you're not going to get any blisters or sores from tying a billion knots. That's why a lot of people like to use that. Also, I would say it gives your projects kind of more of a smooth, delicate look. So if that's kind of what you're going for, that is a good option. Have you made any baskets? So I'm assuming you're talking about macrame baskets. And no, the answer is no, I have never made a macrame basket. But I would love to try. Maybe I'll add it to my little list and we can learn how to make a macrame basket together. How long have you been doing macrame? I've been doing macrame, I think 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years. Not too long actually when you think about it. So I am on my own macrame journey as well, guys. I've not been doing this for a million years, trust me. I feel like a newbie sometimes too when I see other people's works, and I'm like, wow, how did you make that? So we're all in this together. Cue the High School Musical song. What other hobbies do you have? Okay, that's a good question. So well, outside of like art related stuff, I love to run. I do a lot of races, so that's a lot of fun. So I do really love to run. I love to journal. So I have made a bullet journal video recently actually. But that's another hobby. I love to just kind of get creative and jot down my thoughts and draw whatever. I'm not a very good drawer, but I try. And yeah, I like to watch TV. Does that count as a hobby? I saw your skydiving video and I think that is totally awesome. How were you able to do it? Okay, first of all, that's awesome that you stumbled across my skydiving video. I think that is the very first video I ever posted on here, like 3, 4 years ago. I don't even know. 14, 15, 16, 17. Like, yeah, that was a while ago. I think that was 2014 or 15. I don't even know. Wow. Thank you for thinking. That's totally awesome. And how was I able to do it? Wow. This is kind of surreal because I did it with a really good friend of mine from college, and one day we were just talking about, we didn't want to be at school, right? And we were like, let's just go skydiving. And then one day in the summer, he texts me and he's like, so when are we going skydiving? And I'm like, wait, were we serious here? Because that sounds a little scary. But I mean, he was dead serious. So I said, okay. And I was totally terrified, and I think I blacked out, but I did it. And it was pretty epic. Would I ever do it again? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. I think it would take the right person asking me to go with them, but would I ever do it alone? No. But that's totally cool that you found that video. I'll link it below if anyone wants to see it. Is there a fiber art that you want to learn or would teach in addition to macrame? I really want to learn how to weave. I think that would be really, really fun. And another thing I kind of want to get back into, I did this in high school in an art class. It was a fiber art class, actually. We did basket weaving, real baskets, not macrame. Like underwater basket weaving where you get the wood all wet and then you can bend it. That's what we did, and I love doing that. So that would be pretty cool to get back into that and maybe share with my viewers. Again, if I learned how to weave, that would be fun, right guys? Maybe we could do macro weaves. I know some people have requested me to do a macro weave video, but I haven't yet because I don't actually know how to weave. Do you have a favorite knot? Ooh, that is a good question. A favorite knot. I feel like I always say a knot is my favorite when I am teaching. I love them all, honestly. I mean, you can make so much stuff with the knots, so how can I pick one over another? But if I had to, I really like the berry knot. I think it's adorable, and I love the texture it adds to projects. And I really like the Josephine knot. Again, that's a beautiful knot, and I think once people get the hang of it, anyone can make that knot. So I think that's really great that a beautiful knot like that is accessible to everyone. And I don't know, I guess I like the square knot a lot. I think the square knot is great because you can make entire detailed wall hangings with just a square knot. So I think that's pretty cool. How much time and experience between learning how to macrame and being able to create patterns? Okay, when I first started learning, I did use tutorials to make patterns. So I did a wall hanging and an owl and a plant hanger. So it was based on tutorials. But really after I learned the three most basic knots, which is the square knot, the double half hitch, and the lark's head knot, I think I just kind of caught on to those knots and was able to feel comfortable and just playing around with them. So I really think that once you guys master those knots and just try to really express yourself more, you'll get more comfortable creating your own patterns. So I really don't think anyone needs too much time before they can start creating their own patterns. It is fun to go off of other people's. I still like to do that sometimes as well. I was always playing around with the knots, so I almost prefer teaching to making my own huge wall hanging. I'd like to get more into that, but you know, so far teaching has really been my passion in this little journey. So yeah, not super long, but not like, it wasn't like that either. Okay, so are there any places beside YouTube to get pattern ideas? My local craft stores have no books or supplies of any kind on macrame. So there are blogs on the internet that I think have some patterns that are outside of YouTube. Otherwise, a lot of people sell patterns on like Etsy. So go on Instagram and just use the hashtag macrame, and you'll find a million different macrame artists, and most of them have Etsy shops. And a lot of these creators sell patterns as well. So that is an option to get a pattern. Otherwise, you can search for actual books that you can buy. So there's a few out there. I actually just got one for Christmas, and I kind of want to do a book review on it. It's The Year of Knots. But so just kind of search, maybe Google macrame books or something like that, and you'll be able to find some that you can order online and have shipped to your house. Where did you learn macrame and when did you start this all? Well, I think I kind of already answered that question, but they also ask, are you married? The answer is no, I am not married. I am 100% single right now. Yeah. Alright guys, so that is all the questions I had for this video. I hope I answered them okay and that you guys got some new knowledge from this fun little video. If you didn't leave me a question before and you want one answered, you can always leave a comment down below and I will try to answer them as best as I can. Thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you guys next time. Bye!